Hi, today we want to build an address autocomplete using Google Places API inside of Toddle. And it's super simple. You probably know this when you want to buy something online or you want to enter your credit card information, right? You type in your address and you get the autocomplete of your address and some similar addresses. And today we want to build that inside of Toddle, and it is super simple. So let's get right started. And I always like to start with the back end part and then work myself up to the front end. So let's get right started with Google's documentation. So inside of Google's documentation, we have the autocomplete information. And this is kind of like what we want to do, but we just want to return it in English, not in French. But it is a similar principle that we're trying to accomplish here. So, but as you can see, it requires us to have an API key. So first of all, create a Google API key. You can do that in the Google Cloud Console. But more importantly, we don't want to expose that API key on the front end because this is our Google Cloud Console API key and it is tied to our credit card. It may not be the best decision to have this exposed on the front end for obvious reasons. So what you want to do now is, first of all, we want to get this working on our backend so the API key is secure. So first of all, let's go to Xano or any backend of choice, but Xano is the cheapest backend. There are a lot of alternatives like FastGen, like BuildShip, and some other smaller companies. But I found in my experience working with those technologies that Xano is the most powerful one, the most scalable one, and the only one that I have my own infrastructure built and that I trust on a daily basis. Also, if you want 10% off of Xano, there is a link in the description. It's an affiliate link. I mean, I have affiliate links for all other tools and they pay me way much more than Xano, and I still choose to push you towards Xano. So this is advertisement enough. But we'll just go to our settings and then we go on manage in environment variables. And now we want to add our Google Cloud API key. So we add Google Maps. Let's call this Google Maps because they are restricted. And now I'll be exposing my API key. Let's put that API key in here. No worries, after this video, it's gone. So let's save that in here. Okay, so now we got our API key inside of Xano. So now we can actually create an API endpoint that queries this. So we go to API, we go to add API group, and then in here we call this Google_places, or you can add it into an existing group too if you want. There are no restrictions on that. And now we want to add an API endpoint. So we add a custom endpoint, and let's call this place as an example. It'll be a get endpoint more than likely. And now we are just in here, and we will add our text for input. That will be like when people put in their address, 500 Victoria Drive or whatever. And now in here in the function stack, I want to add an API call, an external API call. I want to go on import curl, and now I want to go back to Google's documentation and switch it to curl and copy their curl command, and let's paste that in Xano for their API. We'll import this, and as you can see, we got input types, and then we got language. We got to change that to EN because we want it in English. And then we need to change maybe some other few things. Let's look at that. So geocode, I don't know what geocode means. Here we go. Request for cities, request for addresses. So, okay, geocode seems to be, that's the one we're working with. And then I need to add my API key in here. So we want to make that secure. So let's delete the API key here. And we go inside of the input field and we go to environment, env, and then we have our Google Maps API key. That's important, so when people go in our API endpoint, they don't see the API key just hard-coded in there. That would be like a security concern. So now let's actually try running this with our sample, and as you can see, we're getting some information here for Victoria. Here we go, Victorville, and we're getting some information. Now, we need to make this dynamic so the input in Xano actually talks to the API that goes to Google. So let's go to the input in here in our API, and the input value needs to be replaced with the input that our API will receive. So if I'm adding 780 K, and let's see what we get. I'm getting 700 King Street, Toronto, and I'm getting all that stuff. So that seems to work amazingly. What I don't like though is that I get my API key returned in here, and that would be, if sent like this to the backend, a security concern. So what we need to do, what I like to do first is let's rename this output to places_API. So I have that. And now let's copy the response and let's create a variable that we just, where we only return what we need. So let's call this results. And then I go to places_API. I click on subpath. I'll paste my payload in here. I click on define and I expand. I go to response. I expand on result. And then we see this array with predictions. And we click on predictions. Now, we only want to go to response and return the results variable so that we only get the array of the results back. And now this is ready to be queried by our front end inside of Toddle. So let's get this started. So first of all, we want to copy the endpoint URL and we want to go to Toddle. And we click outside of the canvas and we'll add our API. Please ignore that I already have access to API v2. It's pretty much the same, but Andreas told me I'm not allowed to click on that yet and show you that on YouTube. So someday we'll show you what that's doing, but I'm not allowed to show it yet. It is top secret. I'll be risking a lot already showing here my screen and that there is a v2 or something. So that's it. We'll paste the URL in here. We'll make sure it's a post. And then we'll call this get_place as an example, or get places, right? We don't need auto fetch because that will be expensive. And actually it's a get request, not a post. That's a bad habit. It's a get, as you can see. We make it as a get. Now, if I were to turn on auto fetch, and we don't get anything yet, but I like to have auto fetch for now, but because we need to add a query for input. As you can see, our API in Xano receives the input value in here. So we need to receive the input, and that input needs to be now bound to an input field where people can add an address. So now, before we continue, let's actually turn off auto fetch so I don't lose all my credits in the meantime. And let's start actually building the UI. I think that will be fun. So let's actually make a nice form in here. So we'll add a form. Now inside that form, we'll add an input, just like that. And that input field, that will be an address input, just like that. So we have our form, we have our input, just like that. Now the input field should be probably width 100% and height should be auto. And then we'll make top and bottom padding 0.75 rem and side padding also 0.75 rem, just like that. And then we'll make the border 10 pixels and we'll make the background color gray 50. Yeah. And then we'll go in here and the text color will be gray 700 and we'll add a border radius of gray 200, just like that. And then we'll go in here and we'll add street address. So people have their street address in here. And now we kind of like want to build a nice form in here. So we'll make this width 90%, maximum width 25 rem. Oh, 20 rem. Here we go. That looks nice. So we got the street address. Now we need to add something like a zip code. So we can just add another input in here and structure that. So we got street address, or actually, there's so many international types of addresses. I think the best example would just be having one input and people put their address in there. I've seen it a lot of times that those providers just have you select one or type in the address and then I pass it together. So that's also one way of doing that. You could also break it into multiple pieces. It's pretty much a very similar approach. I think, let's just have it on one line for simplification purposes to understand the principle here. So we have that input. I would like to wrap that input now in a div block. So we have this input in a div, and this input should also be with 100% just to make sure. And then in this input, we'll add a div, right? That will be the list. And inside of that div, we'll add, for example, a button. And that button will be with 100%, and we'll render that button dynamically. So let's get a baseline structure working here, and then we'll make it pretty. So what we want to do is on input, we want to call the API. So what we want to do here is, first of all, create a variable called address. So we have address. Address, just like that. It'll start empty, and we will map this with this input field to address in the attributes. Now, if I type in the address, just like that, I'll have it in the variable. Now, since we have it in the variable, that's where we store the data, is accessible for us inside of our API call. So we go to the input, we go on fx, and we map it to our address variable. That's how we do that. Now, what we can do is we could make this auto fetch, but I would not suggest doing that. What we could do is we could go on input, right? On input, we would make an API call to the get places API, right? And so let's actually, type something in, 900. And now let's look at the get places API, and we got all the places with 900, right? So now we go on this button here, and we'll add a repeat, wrap in element, repeat. We'll go to get places, and we go to data, and now we get our suggestions in here. So now we render those, and then we'll go on the button text as an example here, and we'll go to item, and we go to description, and then we'll have some suggestions in here, right? So we get this autocomplete. Now it looks terrible, but we're going to style it. So let's go to this button here, and let's give it, first of all, a nice styling of the element holding it. So let's make this 0.5 rem, or actually, I have a nicer idea. First of all, though, we need to have this be transparent for now. Okay, and the text should be inherit. Okay. Let's go on the div holding it, and let's give it a background of gray 50. Let's give it a border of 10 pixels as well, and let's give it a border radius of gray 200. Now, we'll just border radius. Okay, here we go. That's nice. Now we got to go inside of the button, and we got to make the size of that a little bit smaller. So now let's do 13. That looks nice. Okay. And then we want to make sure that the text inside of here is centered. Ooh, and I'm zooming in Toddle now. Ooh. Let's make it centered in here, just like that. So we got the suggestions here. And I want to add the top and bottom padding 0.5 rem of that button. And we don't have any height on there, so it should be 0.75 maybe. Yeah, that looks very nice. And then I go inside of here, and I go on border, and I add a border, but only on the bottom, just like that. And then I'll make sure that border on the bottom is grade 200. And actually, I need to remove my border radius in here. So you see how that looks? We got those nice suggestions in here. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure that it is like absolute. So we have this input in here and we have this div holding both. This element though needs to be absolute. Actually, it needs to be a little bit different. I need to copy out this element. So let's take this div and copy it out. And I go in this div holding the input. And in here, I add another div that will stay fixed. And in this div, I will add my list. So I make the list absolute. So then it automatically aligns. And then I can go to my absolute list in here. And I go on top. And I make 0.5 rem. And it moves it down 0.5 rem. And so it doesn't realign the whole element. So as I type, then I do 700 as an example, I'll get that, suggestions, as you can see. So we got that. Now what happens if someone clicks on a suggestion? So let's do 900, right? So what we would be doing is, I think we should be basing the state on if this element is visible or not based on another variable that will be like show list. So, when a user clicks this, it'll set it and then it won't show it again until the user types again. But, I think that will be a best practice. So let's go in here and let's create a variable called show list, and it'll be on default at false. Oh, false, just like that. So now we go on this element and we'll go on show and we'll go on show list. And when show, oh, there's a typo in there. Oops, it's show list. Now the cool thing about Toddle is if I change a typo in a list, it'll automatically update it. Now show list is false, so it should not be shown. And that is true. That is the case. That's beautiful. So now, since we don't have it shown, what we want to do is we want on success of that API, so we go on input, and then on input we call it API. So on success of that API, I want to make show list true. So it shows the list with the results, right? Then what we want to do is we want to, on click of any of those, make it false. So let's type in 677 as an example. And then I go on this button and then I go on click. And what we need to do on click is we need to set the current item as the address. So we can do that already. So let's go on address in here, right? And I go on address and I go on, I go on item, I go on description. So we'll set the address that is in here. And then we need to go to show list and we'll make it false until the user types again. So if I click on the suggestion, it'll update it in here. And then if I, change it, I'll be able to update that address. So maybe I want to add floor 56 as an example. And then I'll be able to enter that and then it'll remove it also. So that's how that works. So what we want to do then too is we want to go when we actually have the address. So let's type in 900 as an example, and we want to remove or make the hover a little bit nicer because there's not a nice hover yet. So we'll go in here and how about we make it gray 300? Ooh, I mean, it looks like something that Google built, to be quite honest. So how about we make this gray 200? Yeah, that's pretty decent. Yeah, I mean, it's not that colorful. It should be a little bit colorful. So how about we make it actually nice? Let's add blue 50. And then when it's blue 50, we'll go in here and make the text blue 800. So yeah, that looks beautiful. Look at that. And then I can set it in here and then I can go back and update it. Oh, and did you see that? We don't have it full width. So we need to go in here and make sure they're all full width. So we got the div. This div needs to be width 100%. Here you go. And then this is already, that needs to be with 100%. So now we got our autocomplete input working inside of Toddle. So as you can see, we will be getting our suggestions. I can click on them and then I can update them. I can make like a unit 600, comma, and I'll just enter it and it'll update, as you can see. And then, you know, the user will be able to submit that and have it shipped to their house. And ooh, for some reason, that is still visible. So we need to make one more thing. We need to base it also on hidden if the length of the variable is 0. So we got show list is false. And we also want to do or if show list is false, or if the address size equals 0. And now, for some reason, why is this? Equals 0. Let's make a not in there. Because, you know, we need to reverse it. We want to have a false if there, and it should be and, right? I think that'll be the solution to this. Let's type. Yeah, that'll do it. Just like that. And then true, and it should only set it. Let's look at input again. After the API call was successful, that's what we're doing. So we got the show list in here. And then when we click on it, it'll remove it. Okay. Yeah, so this is how we got the suggestions here. So we can take one in here and then we can, you know, we get our suggestions and I can put my address in here and then we'll be able to update that. And then, you know, this is how we have this autocomplete using, you know, Google Places API, and we have it secure because we don't run it in Toddle, we run it on a proper backend. That's why backends are so important, so that you don't expose your API keys, because this is linked to your credit card and it can cause a lot of damage. So if you want to learn more about doing those exciting things, and, you know, if you feel like, you know, you're stuck at some things, or you just want that extra help, that extra support to push past through some limitations, or, you know, to, you know, just do things that would normally take you weeks to do in a few days, I would highly suggest you to look into NoCodeProCode.com. You'll also have the link in the video description down below. It's the best place to learn and build faster in Toddle and Xano. We have Toddle boilerplates of basically whole pre-made SaaS templates that you can just, you know, copy, paste, and customize to build your SaaS in rapid time. And then we have step-by-step courses. We have dozens and dozens of hours of educational resources to help you realize your idea and build your product and get it out there quick. We got a whole component library with really exciting stuff. Let me show you. Let's go to help.nocodeprocode.com and let me show you you know, some of the cool components that we have in here. Let's not tutorials. Because we got also cool tutorials, really cool stuff. Debugging, we got a get and set course here, right? That's like, I think, half an hour or almost an hour. If then, we got like the Toddle compiler style variables, compliant fonts, multi-step forms, gated content, billing, auth course. We got a classes course. We got file upload preview. We got SMS auth. We got AI voices. We got like the basics in Toddle and all that stuff. Then we got also some cool Xano tutorials in here, right? AI agents, website scraper. Then here you'll see that, you know, with an auth error debugging, loops in loops, a SaaS backend, AI SaaS in Xano, and much more. And, you know, then this is where we have, oh, there is it, the Toddle templates. That's really the thing. We get this whole pre-built, the frame boilerplate to build a SaaS rapidly fast, but we got even things like Stripe payment element, you know, that's ready for Stripe Connect. So you can just go in Toddle do this, right? And you got your Stripe payment element in here, and the only thing you need to do is reload the page one time. And as you can see in here, you'll get Stripe payment element in here that would normally take you probably a few days to build. And you got it already in Toddle. And then you just go in here, you go on the home page, and you go on components, and you add your Stripe payment element, and you just, update the events and update the attributes, and that's all you got to do. And you have those, complex things already set up for you. And we got much more. We got a Toddle PDF reader. We got real-time WebSockets. We got Touch Swipe plugin. We got a GSAP plugin. We got a single-page application template. We got a video player, fancy file uploader, light and dark mode. Here's a fancy file uploader. A slider for Toddle. We got a moving rainbow gradient, AI image generator, voiceover generator, lemon squeezy checkout. So we got a bunch of cool stuff in here. And then the most coolest stuff here are our daily office hours. So whenever you're stuck at a template, whenever you're stuck at something, you can join our daily office hours and, ask your question and get it solved that right day, so that you're never stuck at anything. If you don't know how to set that up in the template or you face that roadblock, just join office hours. They're every day, 9 a.m. PDT. And you'll be able to get your situation solved, immediately. And, then as you can see, the daily office hours, we got pre-made Xano snippets, the frame and all of that, and exclusive tutorials. You saw them. We got a bunch of them. And, everybody loves it. And, it's just there to help you make progress faster and to also understand how that principles, how those principles work that you're doing with those tools. And, Leonard built his web application 50% faster. And, it's just a wonderful resource to just get things moving. And right now, while in beta, we have a video application process, but you can also make an audio where just, record why you want to join. And then within 12 hours, we'll send you the link to join, just so that there is no overload on people subscribing and wanting to join that membership. But as you can see, you get a whole lot, and I would love to see you in there. But regardless on if you join or not, and the link to join is in the video description. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate that. And again, NoCodeProCode.com. That's where you'll find more information. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing exciting stuff with the Google Places API, and have a wonderful rest of your day, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.